Renee here. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going over my favorite books of 2021. So I have been so excited for this video. I love lists. I love ranking things. I love end of the year countdowns. And I am just so excited to gush over my favorite books of the year. This is going to be a 10-book list, and I am, of course, going to be ranking it. So we're going to start with number 10 all the way up to number 1, which is my favorite book of the year, which you might be able to guess because I talk about it all the time. I've expressed my love for it all the time. Hello? Your hidden talent? Sorry about that. But we're back. So as I was saying, yes, this is going to be ranked from 10 to 1, favorite book last, and I'm just so excited to talk about these books. And I will say there are 2 authors on this list that appear more than once. So clearly I found some new favorites this year. Let's get it. We're gonna start with number 10, which is A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. This book took me by complete surprise. Like, I expected to like it. I definitely expected to like it, but I didn't expect to love it as much as I did. These little tabs here are just really good quotes. Let me see if I can pick one out. I am firm, my lady, and I understand leverage. The people only call me cruel because it is easier to think of a woman as cruel than competent. The writing of this book is beautiful. There's exquisite prose. It is stunning. And definitely some trigger warnings because this book touches on what it is like to be in a toxic relationship, and it just touches on it so well, and it does such a good job depicting it. And I still think about this book. I read this book, I think, over the summer, and I still think about it all the time. Just the way that it was written and the concept of it, I've never read anything like it. And if you don't know the base of it, it is a polyamorous retelling of Dracula's Brides. It's stunning, it's beautiful, and it's short. It's very, very short. It's only like 240 pages, and I don't think it's for everyone, but it is for me. And if you want to give it a shot, I highly recommend that you do so. Next up at number 9, we have Beach Read by Emily Henry. This is another book that took me by complete surprise. And let me actually preface this by saying 2021 is the year that I discovered romance. 2021 is the year that I realized how much I love reading romance novels. So I started dabbling more into books of that genre, discovering more authors and new favorites, including Beach Read. And I did not expect this one. It kind of just came out of the blue. I picked it up on audiobook, actually. This was available on Libby, and I was like, you know what, let me try it. I had heard about it, and it was over the summer that I read this. This was like in May or June, I think. And I was like, perfect, a nice beach read. But what I didn't expect the most was me sobbing. This book follows our 2 main characters who are authors, and they both write very different genres. Our main female protagonist writes women's literature, romance, that kind of stuff, and our main male protagonist writes things that maybe don't have the happy endings, more literary fiction, that type of stuff. And they both end up being neighbors at this little lake town in Michigan, which is another thing that's kind of misleading because this is definitely not the beach. Because I'm pretty sure it was just like the lakes at Michigan over the summer. But it was in the summer, so I don't know, that threw me off too. And they essentially decide to make a bet with each other that they can write each other's genres and see what book ends up doing better on the charts. So then they end up kind of teaching each other the ins and outs of their genres, and they start being around each other a lot more. But beyond that romance level, you also get this underlayer of what they've been through or what they're going through in their lives, and it does get a little bit heavier. And especially the main female protagonist, her story was so touching to me. It wasn't 100% relatable, but there were definitely aspects of it that I related to that really just impacted me in a very emotional way, and that is why I cried, and I wasn't expecting that. Then at number 7, we have From Lucof with Love by Mariana Zapata. This was my first book by Mariana Zapata, and it will not be my last. It will not. be my last. This book was so good. This was actually part of a video that I did with my good friend Lucy from Read by Lucy. She gifted this to me in our book swap, where she picked a book out for me to read and I picked a book out for her to read. And this was the book she chose for me, and oh my god, I'm so glad she did. Look at these. This was the first book I ever tabbed. Mariana Zapata is the queen of slow burn, and I used to think that I hated slow burn. I used to think that slow burn was just not for me. I'm very impatient. I don't necessarily like insta-love, but you know, sometimes I got impatient just waiting for the get-together to happen. But with this book, I was not impatient at all. And I think with Mariana Zapata, she's turned me more on to slow burn, to the point where I want to give more a try, because this was just done so well. And then by the time you got the payoff at the end, oh my god, it just made it 10 times better. It's 10 times better when you're waiting for something and there's this great buildup and then it happens and you just want to celebrate. It was beautiful. And this is also more of an enemies to lover, grumpy type of trope. Both of our characters are a little bit more on the grumpy side and they don't really like each other in the beginning. It's a figure skating story, so both of our main characters are figure skaters and they end up being paired together in a duo partnership. And like I said, they don't like each other, and it's their relationship blossoming throughout their training together, and it's just stunning. It is just so good, and I never really thought a grumpy slow burn book would be for me, but I'm obsessed with it. Coming in at number 6, we have another 2021 release, and that is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Going into this year, I had not read a single Taylor Jenkins Reid book. And I know that a lot of people had mixed opinions on this. I know a lot of people were let down. You know, it's not to the caliber of some of Taylor Jenkins Reid's other books, but that does not mean that it wasn't good. And I feel like it got lost. Maybe we got lost in translation. Taylor Jenkins Reid has a way of writing characters so well. She writes her characters in a way that by the time I finish reading the book, I feel like I know them. Like, I feel like they're real, and I've met them, and like, we're bros. Like, it's so good. And this was no different. It's so good. And it has a big cast of characters. This book follows the Riva family. And not only does it follow all the siblings in present day, it also even goes back farther to their parents in past day, how their parents met and how their parents' relationship progressed and evolved and what happened with them, which eventually led to what's going on with the kids and how they are to this day. And just seeing the progression and the development of the characters is stunning, and not all of the characters are likable, and I think that is something that I view differently. I don't mind unlikable characters if they're written in a great way, and Taylor Jenkins Reid does that. She writes unlikable characters, but in such a raw, realistic way that you just have to appreciate it. And a couple of these characters in here definitely, you know, they weren't as likable, but it still hit me so hard, especially the story about Mick, who is their father, Mick Riva. I cried reading this. I feel like this is gonna be a trend. You're gonna hear me say I cried with a few of these books, and that's how you know that I really, really loved it, is if I cry. Because if a book hits me hard enough for me to cry, it's special to me. The relationship that they have with their father hit me so deeply. I lost it. I just lost it. And to be honest, like, I don't even hate Mick Riva. And he is definitely the most unlikable character in this book. But I don't even want to say anything without like spoiling it. This book is all about this party that the Riva family throws. It's the Riva party. It happens every summer. It's notorious. A lot of famous people go to it. And you already know in the beginning of the book, and especially it even says it in the synopsis, that like there's a fire at the end, like, so you know, like, things are gonna go down. But I didn't expect for it to be as deep and as touching as it was. And I love that. And I love the connection with the surfing. I love just all the little bits that are thrown in. We get a lot of different perspectives too. Even really minor characters have like a small section for their point of view in this book. And I just, I think it's great. And I do think that it was a little underrated this year. And I don't know. I just think you should give it a shot. Maybe next summer. Then coming in at number 6, we have Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco. This is actually one of the more recent books I've read this year. I read it last month, and I don't know why it took me so long to read this. Like, this book was just set up for me. It feels like it was set up for me. I knew I would love it. Absolutely knew it. But I just kept putting it off. And then I finally got around to it, and oh my god, when I say this book had me in a chokehold. A complete chokehold. I listened to it on audio, and I also read it physically, so I did a little bit of both. Let me say, the audiobook, really good. There are definitely some creepy moments, like right off the bat. There's like these witchy chants. There's ominous music in the background of some scenes, and it just completely like took me by surprise sometimes, and I was really creeped out. So I do recommend the audiobook. But this book follows our main character whose sister has been murdered, and she is out to seek revenge for her murderer. And there's these 7 princes of hell that can come up to the earth, and there's a bunch of witchcraft and a bunch of magic. And obviously there's a love interest with one of the 7 princes, which is great. And there's so much tension between the two where I'm just like, ugh, it's so good. It is just so good. But even if there wasn't romance in it, I feel like I would still really enjoy the story. And for me to say that with a fantasy is very strong. I really, really like the storyline of this. And I like how it's written. And I really like our main character. I think she's very strong. And I just am so invested. Like, literal chokehold of this book. Yes. Okay, now we're getting into my top 5 books of the year. These 5 books are definitely very, very special. I think about these books like every day. Like, that might be an exaggeration, but it also might not be. So coming in at number 5, we have The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Another Taylor Jenkins Reid book on this list. I loved this book, and I knew I would. This was actually the last Taylor Jenkins Reid book that I read this year, and I've read 4 of her books this year. This is the last one I read. So I knew that I would love it because I was already so invested in her writing style, and I knew that this was everyone else's favorite. Like, I think it's safe to say that this is the most popular book by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and for good reason. The representation in this book, phenomenal. And the writing of this book, phenomenal. The storyline of this book, phenomenal. And it's something that I wouldn't even usually read. It's more of a historical fiction. I don't typically care about historical fiction, but oh, wow. But Evelyn Hugo is such a strong character. And listening to her story, because I did listen to this on audiobook, I was so invested. I didn't even want to get out of my car to go into work when I was listening to it. And I would sit in my driveway when I got home to just continue listening to it because I was so invested in it. And there's so many really good, impactful quotes in here. Like, there's one that will always stick out for me, and it's, "Don't ignore half of me so you can fit me in a box," because Evelyn Hugo is bisexual, and I think that that is just such great representation in this book, and I think that it is so stunning, and I know that a lot of people can identify themselves in Evelyn Hugo and her strength, and it is amazing. And if you don't happen to know, this book follows an interview that's going on with Evelyn Hugo, where she is going just over the events of her life, because she is this really popular figure, a really popular actress who has had 7 husbands, and nobody actually knows who the actual love of Evelyn Hugo's life is. And this journalist or reporter gets the chance to interview Evelyn Hugo in order to write the biography of her life, and wow, it's stunning, and it is worth all of the hype. 100% read it. Then coming in at number 4, we have The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. The rom-com of my dreams. I adore this book so much. I absolutely love it. Once again, listen to it on audio. I did listen to a lot of books on audio this year, and wow. This just completely took me by surprise. This was actually the first summer-esque book that I read, and that is what started the whirlwind of the rest of my summer reads for the year. And honestly, they just need to make this into a movie right now. And I think they are. I actually think they are. I think they announced it. This is the perfect rom-com to watch, to read, to just anything. Like, it is so good. And it follows our main characters whose siblings are getting married. So the main female protagonist, her sister, is the bride, and the main male protagonist, his brother, is the groom. And they're getting married, and obviously they're in the wedding and everything. And at the wedding, everybody falls ill with this food poisoning from the buffet that they had, except for our two main characters because they didn't eat it. And our main character's sister had, obviously, the honeymoon already planned out. So she's like, just go on my honeymoon. So Olive, our main female protagonist, ends up going on the vacation, and so does our main male protagonist, Ethan. They actually don't really like each other. And there's a lot of really good banter between the two, obviously. It ends up being kind of like fake dating because they have to pretend to be the bride and groom on the honeymoon in order to, you know, not lose their trip. So it's fake dating, it's a little bit of enemies to lovers, it's amazing banter, it's funny, and it is swoon-worthy. I love Olive and Ethan together so much. They're one of my favorite book couples, and oh my god, I just had a complete blast reading this book, and I cannot wait to watch it on the big screen because I can just tell it's gonna be amazing. Okay, so moving into top 3, and coming in at number 3, we have The People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. This book, I talk about this book all the time. I shove it down people's throats, I throw it in their faces. I just want everyone to read this book. It's so good. It is so good. This is the second Emily Henry book on this list. Clearly, I love her. I can't wait for her 2022 release. But The People We Meet on Vacation does differ a lot from Beach Read. Beach Read was a little bit heavier, where People We Meet on Vacation is definitely lighter. And it's more friends to lovers, which I don't often read friends to lovers, but when I do, I guess I love them. So People We Meet on Vacation has a lot of alternating timelines, so it'll go like 12 summers ago, this summer, 5 summers ago, this summer, 11 summers ago, this summer, like vice versa. It takes place with our two main characters who were really best friends throughout college. They would plan all these vacations together, and they would go on a trip every single summer until something ends up happening and they lose touch, they fall out, and they're not friends anymore. And then the point of view with this summer is them going on one last trip to try to fix their relationship. So it sounds like it might be a little confusing, but it's so not. It is written so well, and just seeing their growth over time and going back through their trips, it's so fun. It is so fun. And one of the overall premises of the book that I really, really like a lot is, you know, sometimes it's not necessarily about where you're at on vacation or how you're vacationing, how much money you spent, or what you're doing. It's the people that you meet. And that is the underlying tone of this story that I do feel like gets a little overlooked, and I love just talking about it because it is something that I really, really love and enjoy about this book. But it's true, the people that you meet on vacation will stick with you. Even if you might not remember their name down the road, you'll still remember like how you met this person at this place and it was so funny. Like, you'll tell stories about it. Like, for example, when I just went on a vacation with my boyfriend and a couple other friends, we went to Joshua Tree, California. While we were in Joshua Tree, we met this guy with a golden doodle at this campsite bumping Taylor Swift, like her whole entire Lover album, walking around barefoot with a beer after he just like scaled a mountain. Like, I can't even make this up. And he was so cool, and I'm always gonna remember him. And we talked to him for quite a while, and we actually ended up running into him the next day, and we're like, funny enough. And the thing is like, that kind of stuff happens a lot on vacations, and I just, while reading this, was just going back through all of my old vacations, just remembering these people that I've come across, met, ran into, just whatever. Even if it was the briefest interaction, like, there are some people that I'll just never forget. And I love that about this book. On top of the actual story, I love the connection of our two main characters. Emily Henry just writes chemistry so well. She does it so well, and I cannot wait to read more by her, and I cannot wait for her release next year. Like, oh, yes. Then moving on to number 2, second place runner-up for my favorite book of the year, and that is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Once again, Miss Taylor Jenkins Reid. Oh my god, I love her so much. Her books, stunning. This one definitely took the cake for me. This was actually the first audiobook I ever listened to as well, which I highly recommend the audiobook because Daisy Jones and the Six is told in interview format. So it is a full cast audiobook that bounces around between all of the characters. You get a new voice for every character, and it's very immersive. And I just had a complete blast listening to it, and the story is amazing. It sounds so simple. You know, it's a story about a rock band in the 70s, how they came together, how they broke up, like what happened to them. But when you're reading it, it is so engaging, and I absolutely loved learning about this band and all of the characters. And there, once again, are other layers. You know, not all of these characters are likable. Daisy herself is not a very likable character, and I always hear, like, when people have a critique about this book, it's because they didn't like Daisy. I love Daisy. I think that she is a strong character. No, I mean, she's not perfect, and she definitely has a lot of aspects about her that I can completely understand why people wouldn't like, but I love that redemption quality in unlikable characters. Like I said, if it's written well, like, I can't not like them, even if they're written unlikably. I don't even know if that makes sense. Like, it makes sense in my head. And there's also this other underlying factor of addiction. Addiction is handled really well in this book. And I'm sure that you can assume about a rock band in the 70s, you know, there's gonna be, like, sex, drugs, rock and roll, you know, substance abuse, like that kind of stuff. And a couple of our main characters in here actually do struggle with addiction, and I really like how Taylor Jenkins Reid depicted it. She wrote it from the perspective of a world where it was almost glamorized. Like, when you think of rock and roll, like, you know, you can kind of think of like substance abuse, drugs, that kind of stuff comes with it. And she wrote it in a way from a perspective where in this world, that kind of like drugs and alcohol and substance abuse, like that kind of stuff is like almost glamorous, but she showed how unglamorous it was under the surface, like in reality. Like, it is painful and raw, and it hurts people. It not only hurts the person going through it, it hurts the people around them. And she did such a good job of depicting that, and it was beautiful. Addiction's not beautiful, but how she wrote it, I found, was beautiful, and I was really, really rooting for our characters, and even the unlikable ones. Like, I was just rooting for everybody, and I absolutely loved our characters. Such good development. Like I said earlier, Taylor Jenkins Reid develops our characters so well. And I really liked the girl power in this book. I thought all of the female characters in this book were so strong. Did not take any shit from anybody, and they did things their way. And I loved that. I love this book. It means a lot to me, and I cannot wait for the show. This is being made into a show, I think, on Amazon. Ugh, incredible. But I don't know, and I do think I actually teared up a little bit in this. I don't think I like did heavy sobs or anything, but it definitely did make me feel things, and I honestly am already ready for a reread. Okay, it is that time. We have made it to my favorite book of the year, #1, and I'm sure that some of you already know what it is. Like, this should come as no surprise, to be honest. And that is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. When I tell you that this book, to me, is like life-changing, that's not an exaggeration. Like, when I read this book, I felt so many things. I cried so much reading this book. I sobbed reading Addie LaRue. And it just holds such a special place in my heart. This might actually be my new favorite book of all time. All time. And also, Elephant in the Room. This is the Waterstones Anniversary Edition that came out this year. And it is stunning. Like, wow. And there's like illustrated pages, like, wow. So yeah, in case you were wondering, Addie LaRue follows the story of Addie, who essentially makes a deal with the devil for, in her mind, freedom, because she doesn't want to marry this guy that she's like arranged to marry. She wants to live life her way. She makes a deal with the devil, and obviously when you make a deal with the devil, there's loopholes and consequences and stuff, so she does end up getting out of her arranged marriage, but she ends up being cursed to live forever with nobody being able to remember her. So as soon as she leaves a room, whoever was in that room with her just forgets her. And it is following her throughout her life. She's lived for hundreds of years now, completely alone. It's this beautiful story of life and also love, and just, oh my God, there's so many incredible quotes in here. I read this at a point where I was literally going through my quarter life crisis, like literally age 25, completely like unsure of where my life was going. So reading this book at that kind of vulnerable moment in life, waterworks, heart open, heart bleeding, eyes crying, like just feeling every second of this book and relating to so much in this book. Honestly, one of the most relatable books that I've ever read, and I needed it. I needed this book when I read it, and that's why it had such a huge impact on me. And I feel like if you go into this book expecting like a super elaborate plot, or if you go into this book expecting like this amazing love story, you're gonna be disappointed. You literally have to go into this book knowing what I said first. This book just means a lot. This book is everything. I could ramble on about it all day, but I already feel like this video is much longer than I wanted it to be. So I'm gonna like reel myself in. So there you have it. Those are my top 10 favorite books of the year. But I also did want to kind of give an honorable mention. I didn't put this in here because it's not actually a novel, it's a manga. And I might make a separate video for manga, I might not. And because I'm not sure if I will, I just wanted to quickly mention this. And that is Orange. I also scream about this a lot. This is the complete collection, volume 1. I also have volume 2. I'm obsessed with this story. It is a perfect manga. And I cried so much. I don't think I've ever cried so much while reading something as I have while reading this. But I also laughed a lot. Like, this just took me through a roller coaster of emotions. It is very, very good. And it follows our cast of characters who end up getting letters from themselves in the future. Like, future them wrote a letter to past them. And past them is reading these letters, and future them had written these letters to hopefully allow their past selves to fix a regret that they have in the future. And that regret is that one of them is no longer there. Like, one of their friends from the past had died, and that is what the letters are for, to hopefully save his life. And oh my god, it is emotional. It is emotional, but it is so good, and I love this story so much. So I had to list this because I did read both of these volumes this year. So definitely if you're into manga, and even if you're not and you just want like a beautiful story, that officially concludes my favorite books of the year. I read so many incredible books this year, so many. And I had a lot of 4 stars as well. Like, I had a lot of books that like came close to being on this list, but it was crazy. Like, I'm so happy that I completely fell back in love with reading this year, and BookTube has definitely helped with that, and it's just made it so fun, and I genuinely have enjoyed myself a lot this year with reading and with this channel, and I cannot wait to continue. So for now, that's all I have for you. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the thumbs up down below to help support this channel, and also subscribe to follow me on my reading journey. Once again, all of my socials, like always, will be down below if you want to follow me anywhere else. And yeah, once again, I hope you like this video, and I will see you in the next one.